on the topic of friendship. You do an amazing podcast called All In Podcast. People should stop listening to this and go listen to that. You just did your 100th episode. I mean, it's one of my favorite podcasts. It's incredible for the technical and the human psychological wisdom that you guys constantly give, and in the way you analyze the world, but also just the chemistry between you. You're clearly there's a tension and there's a camaraderie that's all laid out on the table. So I don't know the two Davids that well, but I have met Jason. What do you love about him?
I mean, I'll give you a little psychological breakdown of all three of these guys.
Sure.
Just my opinion.
Yeah.
And I love you guys.
Would they agree with your psychological breakdown? Or?
I don't know. You know, I think that what I would say about J. Cal is he is unbelievably loyal to no end. And, you know, he's like any of those movies which are about like the mafia or whatever, where like, you know, something bad's going wrong and you need somebody to show up. That's J. Cal.
So if you killed the said proverbial homeless person, he would be right there to help you.
The body.
Yeah.
But he's the one that he'll defend you in every way, shape, or form, even if it's doesn't make sense in that moment. He doesn't see that as an action of whether it'll solve the problem. He sees that as an act of devotion to you, your friend. And that's an incredible gift that he gives us. The other side of it is that, you know, J. Cal needs to learn how to trust that other people love him back as much as he loves us. And that's where he makes mistakes, because he assumes that he's not as lovable as the rest of us. But he's infinitely more lovable than he understands. You have to see Lex, like, he is unbelievably funny. I mean, I cannot tell you how funny this guy is. Next level funny.
Yeah, his timing, everything,
charm, the care he takes. So he is as lovable, but he doesn't believe himself to be. And that manifests itself in areas that drive us all crazy from time to time.
Which makes it for a very pleasant listening experience. Okay, so what about the two Davids, David Sachs and David Friedberg?
David Sachs is the one that I would say I have the most emotional connection with. He and I can go a year without talking, and then we'll talk for 4 hours straight, and then we know where we are, and we have this ability to pick up and have a level of intimacy with each other. And I think that's just because I've known David for so long now. That I find really comforting. And then Friedberg is this person who I think, similar to me, had a very turbulent upbringing, has fought through it to build an incredible life for himself. And I have this enormous respect for his journey. I don't particularly care about his outcomes, to be honest, but I look at that guy and I think, and he did it. And so if I didn't do it, I would be glad that he did it, if it makes any sense. And you can see that he feels like his entire responsibility is really around his kids, and to kind of like give a better counterfactual. And you know, sometimes I think he gets that right and wrong. But he's a very special human being that way.
On that show, the two of you have a very kind of, like, from a geopolitics perspective, I don't know, there's just a very effective way to think deeply about the world, the big picture of the world.
He's a very systems level thinker, which I really,
that's
really
a good way
like.
to put it, yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very...
Absolutely.
Very systems level. So looking
and
at everything.
He's very rooted in, you know, a broad body of knowledge, which I have a tremendous respect for. He brings all these things in. Sachs is incredible because he has this unbelievable understanding of things, but it has a core nucleus. So Friedberg can just basically abstract a whole bunch of systems and talk about it. I tend to be more like that, where I try to I find it to be more of a puzzle. Sachs is more like anchored in, you know, a philosophical and historical context as the answer. And he starts there, but he gets to these profound understandings of systems as well.
On the podcast, in life, you guys hold to your opinion pretty strong. What's the secret to being able to argue passionately with friends? So hold your position, but also not murder each other. which you guys seem to come close to.
I think it's like strong opinions weakly held. So I think that's
Can you wait? Is that a haiku, or is it? Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, like look, today you and I,
Yeah.
what if we steel man like the two sides of three different things?
Yeah.
Now you could be confused and think I believe in those things.
Mhm.
I believe that it's important to be able to intellectually traverse there, whether I believe in it or not. And like steel man, not straw man. Like that's a really.
But we introed those things by saying, "Let us steel man this position." Sometimes you guys skip the.
You're right. We edit those things out, and sometimes we'll sit on either sides and we'll just kind of bat things back and forth just to see what the other person thinks.
So that's how, like, as fans, we should listen to that sometimes. Like, so sometimes because you hold a strong opinion sometimes. Like, for example, the cost of energy going to zero. Is that, like, what's the degree of certainty on that? Is this kind of like you really taking a prediction of how the world will unroll, and if it does, this will benefit a huge amount of companies and people that will believe that idea. So you really you spend a few days, a few weeks with that idea.
I've been spending 2 years with that idea, and that idea has manifested into many pages and pages of more and more branches of a tree. But it started with that idea. So if you think about this tree, this logical tree that I built, I would consider it more of a mosaic. And at the base or root, however you want to talk about it, is this idea: the incremental cost of energy goes to zero. How does it manifest? And so I talked about one traversal, which is the competition of households versus utilities. But if even some of that comes to pass, we're going to see a bunch of other implications from a regulatory and technology perspective. If some of those come to pass, so I've tried to think sort of this, 6, 7, 8 hops forward. And I have some, like, to use the chess analogy, I have a bunch of short lines, which I think can work. And I've started to test those by making investments, tens of millions over here to 100 millions over there. But it's a distribution based on how probabilistic I think these outcomes are, and how downside protected I can be, and how much I will learn, how many mistakes I can make, et cetera. And then very quickly over the next 2 years, some of those things will happen or not happen, and I will rapidly re-underwrite. And I'll rewrite that tree. And then I'll get some more data. I'll make some more investments. And I'll rapidly re-underwrite. So, in order for me to get to this tree, maybe you can ask, how did I get there? It was a complete accident. The way that it happened was, I have a friend of mine who works at a great organization called Fortress. His name is Drew McKnight. And he called me one day and he said, "Hey, I'm doing a deal. Will you anchor it? We're going public. And it's a rare earth mining company." And I said, "Drew, like, if I'm going to get tarred and feathered in Silicon Valley for backing a mining company." Yeah. And he said, "Chamath, just talk to the guy and learn." And the guy, Jim Latinsky, blew me away. He's like, "Here's what it means for energy. And here's what it means for the supply chain. And here's what it means for the United States versus China." But Lex, I did that deal, and then I did 7 others. And that deal made money. The 7 others did not. But I learned, I made enough mistakes where the net of it was I got to a thesis that I believed in. I could see it. And I was like, okay, I paid the price. I acquired the learning. I made my mistakes. I know where I am at. And this is step 1. And then I learned a little bit more. I made some more investments. And that's how I do the job. It's the minute that you try to wait for perfection in order to make a bet either on yourself or a company, a girlfriend, whatever, it's too late.